No, so, I had an interview this morning with someone, and I was like, okay, I just drank a soda. I'm getting the whole diabetic thing, low blood sugar, whatever. Said, I'm like, you have to do all the talking. And I thought, yeah, so she says, but she's actually going to get on there and start.
Yeah,
Poor
right.
guy.
Famous last words.
Yeah, exactly. Like Charles gets this. He's been doing this. What is this like? 4 years?
Like 4.5 years or so,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
it's been a bit, but time
a little
flies.
bit, yeah. That's right.
So,
That's right.
so welcome everybody to another episode of Marketing Momentum with Charles and Deborah. Hi, Charles.
Right. Hi, Deb. Hi, everybody.
I feel like I had to change it somehow. It's like, or like Mike mentioned Snoopy. If it said hi Snoopy instead of hi Charles or something. Okay, so our topic today it's actually inspired by Charles and his wife. And it was an email. He sends out, seriously, I've said this before. You have to subscribe to Charles' list because he sends out wonderful emails. I enjoy reading your emails, Charles.
I appreciate that.
It was inspired by, I think it was an email you sent out on Monday. And now I forget, I really was inspired. It really was an awesome email, but I'm drawing a blank on Thursday. I can't retain things for 4 days.
Oh, yeah.
Barnes and Noble, is that?
Yeah. We went there on Sunday, and we actually got books, and it was the first time we'd gotten books in a long time because, we had been kind of going to the library, public library, and written a bunch of books, and we just kind of found something that I don't know if it's interesting or not, but when we get books from the public library, they pile up and they sit and we never read them. And so, and then we end up paying for them. So I said, we were at Barnes and Noble. I said, we need to go ahead and buy a book because at least we get to keep it. If we rent a bunch of books to the library and we take them back late and then we end up paying a fine, we don't even keep the book. So I said, we're actually saving. I mean, it's not really real logic, but we're saving money by buying these things now, right?
That actually does make a lot of sense. So you're saying, okay, I hadn't thought of that when I saw in your email. I'm like, well, it's free at the library, but you're saying because it's free, it's kind of like, well, we'll get to it, and then that's when you end up with a fine. And I totally get why. If you're gonna pay a fine, you want to have something tangible.
Exactly right. Yeah, I mean, we should be getting bricks from the public library with our name on it. How much fines we pay. But the fact of the matter is when you get a bunch of them, I don't know, maybe it's psychological. You just think, well, I'll get to them, or you feel at ease, so you just never really just dive into them. And so we end up sometimes taking most of them back, and the ones we actually do read, we keep over time.
Right. That makes sense. Let's say I was reading that thinking I missed the days. It just seems like I read so many books in years past, and now there's so much reading online. I don't know if I'm getting lazy, I'm getting old, whatever it is. But then there's also the whole Kindle thing. And,
Right.
At first I was like, oh, I don't want Kindle. It's not like a PDF. So then I don't know where it is in my hard drive. Well, now I'm addicted to Kindle. So it's like, oh, good, there's a Kindle version. And I've got this huge Kindle library. And I don't know if you have this, Charles, but like finding the book in Kindle. I mean, now I have, I think, 30 categories in Kindle, so I can find whatever books are there.
Well, see, that was, again, that kind of drove me again, because I have a Kindle, I have the Cloud Reader. And so those things started piling up. And so I said, okay, well, I'm getting this stuff, not reading them. Right. I intend to, my intention is good. And I like to, and I do read a lot, but I just start stockpiling stuff that I think I'm going to read. Right. And so I put the brakes on everything. I'm just going to get by one at a time. And it's going to be a real book. Even if I have to pay full price, I'm just going to read it.
That almost seems easier. Like, couldn't you put the book on your desk or on a, maybe, I don't know. I was going to say beside your bed, but no, I'm not trying to go in your bedroom. Yeah. Marketing Momentum. Somewhere where you actually see it and say, hey, I should read that.
I keep it like this one. This is the one I got Sunday. I keep it with me. And I'm I will finish. I mean, Laura will finish hers fast, but I will finish it. And it's actually interesting to me. But all the books I think people pick, right? When you decide, even if you pick one from the library, you say, oh man, this really looks like something I'd really want to read. Except when you stockpile.
Right. I'm looking over my bookcase going, I think I need another bookcase or something. I mean, my grandfather, I think I mentioned this and it's a long story, but he ended up, when he passed, he had more books than any singular public library in the whole like county, I think a whole province. He's in Canada. And it was just, I mean, he could start libraries for all of his descendants. So we all had like a chunk of books. I got like all his John MacArthur books and, so anyway, all these split up. So I grew up with this whole love of books. I mean, you would go into his, I think I've told you this too. He had this office, like, I don't know, his basement. He kind of kept adding on to, well, let's say a house built in the 1950s, if that kind of gives you an idea of, how it was structured. But I mean, he had windows that were turned into bookcases on the inside, of course. And he should have written a book on how to build bookcases, because it was like everywhere I looked as a kid, it's like, that's a bookcase. That's a bookcase. It was just everywhere. And his whole office, it kind of went into a second story. It wasn't fancy. It was small, but it was from the floor all the way to the ceiling of like, oh man, I don't know how many thousands, tens of thousands of books, but it was incredible. So I've already said too much, more than what I intended, but needless to say, I grew up with it wasn't forced because I love books, but it was, as you can imagine, if you've got a grandfather that's into books that much, as grandkids, it's kind of expected that you're going to be reading. You do. Right. Yeah, exactly. And of course, now it's transferred to Kindle. But the fact that you have the book on your desk, I was just picturing that. If I had a book actually sitting there, I'd remember to read it. Because you recommended, was it .com Secrets? And I have the Kindle, and I have the audio. And I think when you recommended it, I went out and got the audio, and it's like, oh, I have the Kindle, and I didn't know I had the Kindle. Yeah. But somewhere in there, and I don't know what happened, I stopped reading the book, and it's to no offense as far as the book, but I don't know what happens. Does that ever happen to you with like the online books, the digital, that you just, all of a sudden you're not reading the book, and it wasn't like, hey, I hate this book, I'm not reading it. It just stops happening.
I think it's the nature of our age, right? Something else. There's something about, and I don't know what it is. I mean, I guess there are probably studies on it, or there's some science on it, but I think when it leaves the physical form, there's something about it that is just not as urgent, right? When you have it and you hold it, I feel like there's some sense of urgency. And now this is interesting that you mentioned that, because now I think about it. When we were in graduate school, we were doing instructional technology. We visited Duquesne, and we sat down with one of the deans of the education school, and she was really talking to us about the nature of educational technology at that point. And she was saying that at that point, and this was back in 2009, 2010, they were not really all that certain as to whether or not we're really reading when we're looking at the screen. So because of the nature of whatever's happening on the screen, she said that your eyes are doing something different than when you would actually sit down and read a book. So I don't know if Kindle has perfected that. I know they've been working on that, so that they're trying to make it so that when you read a Kindle, you're really actually reading, as opposed to looking at the screen when you are sort of reading and your eyes are doing something different than the mechanics of when you're actually reading.
Wow, that is like, I'm thinking, okay, next research project. That sounds really fascinating.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, because I think when I was going through my bachelor's, one of the classes I just loved, it was actually really difficult, and it sounds like the dullest class in the world, but it was on ethics. And the reason it was so interesting is because, I think I probably said this before, but because it actually studied ethics in different cultures and around the globe, around, different time periods and all these different things, and to try to understand people, what they're thinking, what, the culture, all that stuff. But it had like, I don't know, 5 books. It had a lot of books. It's not like they were bank breaking or anything, but I remember it didn't have anything on the Kindle. So everything had to be read. I remember like going over the couch and sitting down, and I actually liked the class so much I would get excited about my assigned reading, which, yeah, I know, I'm a nerd. It's like, but I would sit down, and that's the last time I remember, not that any of the other books or reading material is boring, but it's the last time I remember actually sitting down with a book, enjoying it as far as college. Everything else has been, go get this thing read. It's on an online library. It's a peer-reviewed journal, but there's a digital form. Read it, comment on it, write an essay, I don't mean to pick on the education, but yeah, I think there is a difference.
Yeah, and I think part of it is, you know, uh, we probably grew up, you know, learning how to read with a real book. Now, maybe, you know, maybe our kids, that maybe they might process that kind of information differently. I know my daughters, they love Kindles. Um,
Mhm.
and you know, there's sort of this running debate in my house, like do you really, and seriously, I mean, do you really retain what you're reading? And I mean, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that they're not. I'm just saying, just thinking about what that professor said back then. I said, you know, when you read it, you know, is that technology helping you to get something from what's in your page and into your brain in a way you understand it? And sometimes, you know, they're able to kind of recount in their own way what's really said. So maybe perhaps the fact that they've been reading that stuff on screen, on a screen all their lives, maybe it makes a difference. I think for us, there's a trickiness there.
That makes a lot of sense. And maybe part of it is the follow up. Like I was thinking, um, it's funny, I forgot what course, what degree. I mean, I'm on the third degree as far as the doctorate, not the master's. I think it was that bachelor's, master's, whatever, but something came up. I will spare you. I think, Charles, I think you know the inside story, but still, it's not anything you guys want to know, I promise you. But we were talking about psychology, or in the like the APA, the American Psychological
Yep.
Association, the ethics. And there's ethics, and then there's ethics that may relate specifically to a field that you're in. So that that's as boring as we'll get on that one. But I remember taking the ethics in bachelor's, and that was more like general in life ethics. But then there's ethics in psychology and understanding the APA ethics. And
Yep.
all I remember, I don't even remember what class it was. Or it's like, did I take that in my master's? I know, maybe it was in the doctorate. I don't even know. But I do remember it was online. To go to the APA website and study their, I'd say a certain word that's not appropriate, but study their code of conduct, their code of ethics to a point where I practically had it memorized. And
Yep.
great thing, but it's kind of dull reading. But the difference is, and this is where I'm thinking of your daughters, my kids, we had to come back and discuss it as
Yep.
part of the course. And we had to they didn't tell you where you find this. So it was like, they'd say something really remote and you couldn't use the search to go find it. So you had to dig into the code of ethics to find it and then come back and analyze it and discuss it. I think that's what did it, was the kind of the forced discussion about the code of ethics that I spent so much time searching for the answers,
Yep.
the analysis and the discussion and da da da. Do you think it's possible that part of it is that whole teaching curriculum thing that our kids go through, that the mechanics may be a key part, but maybe we didn't have the same, I don't know. Now that's too many years to try to remember high school is where, okay, yes, I read this in the book. All right, great. You read it. Now you passed. I don't know if that makes it easier or this is too much analysis even for me, but maybe our kids were forced to do something that showed that they read it. Do you think there's something that's kind of getting it into their system in a different way?
Yeah, I definitely do, because I think people are now kind of recognizing that there's some value in being able to have a social element to it, that there's this benefit to other people discussing this issue, and you really do have to think through it. I mean, even if you're off the wall and even if you don't fully understand, you have to draw back on what you do know in order to participate in discussion. And most people don't want to be left out when there's a discussion, right? I mean, even if you don't want to do any schoolwork, but you don't be left out of discussion, right? So, I think they had that emphasis because of kind of where I think education has come. And I think that's also interesting too. You mentioned that because there are, even in our, industry, we put together some information products. And I think what is interesting is that the cases where you have interaction about a particular subject is rare. It seems as if, I mean, you've probably purchased a gazillion things. Somebody will have a Facebook group, somebody will have a forum, somebody will have a something, but I'd say 9 out of 10 of them, the discussion never happens. And it could be because of the nature of the subject, but and it's not even all the time the person, right? It's not as if, well, they set this thing up right, that's why, we're all having this discussion. I don't think it's always that. It just seems like sometimes it is the timing is right. Sometimes it's the subject. Sometimes it's sort of where people are. I don't know.
That's a really good point. I thought of a couple things as you're saying that, but one was there's this discussion on Facebook. This is years ago now. It was on a touchy topic. Some people were talking about having been abused in an area that probably isn't appropriate for marketing momentum, but in an area that at a particular organization. And Mike and I are caring. We jumped in as far as the caring part. You know, how can we help these people? How can we encourage them? How can we point them to areas where they get more help? But I can't remember if this thing went on for like 6 months and it ended up that we went, Charles, I think we knew each other at the time. So I think you heard about some of this stuff that was going on, but we ended up visiting this organization and it turned out that there were some things that weren't so honest. Well, anyway, it's not that you push a button, an easy button, and all of a sudden people's woes go away, but we're able to kind of wrap up some of the question marks. So I'll just put it that way, because I certainly don't want to talk about this on marketing momentum. But after that, this is how it relates. Yes, guys, there is a point in here. I'm not advertising discussion. Just this week, I said, I do not want to repeat that experience. And it's not because of the topic material. It's because it was so intense in the conversation, the Facebook group. It's like I felt like I had to check it every 5 minutes, and someone was saying something, and then you had to respond. And it's not like there was any benefit. Not this about money, but there was. It's not like all of a sudden, oh wow, we're millionaires because we're watching this 24/7. But this week, I was like, you know what? Not going there again. Just not. That's not where I want to be on Facebook.
Yeah, there is something about being able to have that kind of connection when you're when you're trying to learn something. My wife is involved with a group at our church, and it's a sort of had this one purpose when they started it, but then they do a lot of socializing in text. Right. And it's just kind of an interesting thing. And I think people are always looking for some kind of social connection. And I think that's part of it, too.
That's a bit, yeah.
People are always looking for that. And then you sometimes will get, and there's probably science on this, too. There are probably roles that people play. And then there are these catalysts in terms of starting conversations. Because, I mean, I've seen product creators and group owners, they do the perfect lead question, right? They say the perfect question on Facebook that's supposed to get engagement. And then, 3 or 4 people will say, yeah, I did. And then they'll do another one. But then as I said, there are these times where, whether it's a question, whether it's somebody will come in and they'll say, hey, I'm new here. This is my first time. They'll have this long thing, and all of a sudden, the group or the social interaction takes on life of its own around the content.
Yep, I've seen that too. Sometimes it's like the thing that you least expect to take off does take off, and then the thing that seems like it should just kind of dies on the vine.
Right. Yep.
Wow. That's I think that is a great. I'm not trying to say we shouldn't talk about it today, but I'm like, wow, there's so many different caveats on that whole topic that sounds like a great topic for another episode of Marketing Momentum. So if we're summing up this one, I don't know, I put online versus offline books. I'm still thinking that science that you said, Charles. That is just so fascinating as far as, are we really digesting this? Okay, how about this? If we frame this for an internet marketer, should they be pursuing for themselves? If they're looking at having a book available, should they pursue both? Okay, this is really, because I know we didn't really dig into this. Should they pursue having a printed version and an online version?
Yeah, and what elements make that really work for somebody? What is it that they're going to actually pick up, first of all, and be motivated to finish? And then second of all, if they finish it, what are they going to retain?
That's a good, wow. I can also sense an article coming on this. Maybe. I have so many questions for you, Charles, but I don't want to keep you here for two more hours. But yeah, there you go, guys. Go out and read, whether you're reading on your screen. Oh, one last thing I thought of when you're saying this, Kindle. I kept mentioning Kindle, but honestly, I have it on my big screen on the computer. I believe, Charles, when you're mentioning Kindle, you're actually talking about the device. And I think that does make a difference.
It does. I think it does. Yep.
I can't relate. I don't have a Kindle device, but I used to do all my reading, my digital reading on an iPad. And it did feel like when I was picking up the iPad, like I was picking up something more tangible, a book. So
right. Yeah.
just wanted to clear that up in case you're listening to this, and we might be talking about two different aspects of the Kindle technology. So,
yep.
With that, have a great week, guys. Go out and do some reading and have fun. And we'll see you next week on Marketing Momentum with Charles and Deborah.
Bye, Deb. Bye, everybody.
Bye.